My family sold my father's company. They didn't know I was the new owner. The day my family sold my father's company, they celebrated. They opened champagne. They smiled for pictures. They thought they had finally gotten rid of me. Because according to them, I was the son who was never good enough. The son who didn't belong in the business. The son who had no future. But they didn't know one thing. The company they just sold was no longer theirs. And the person who bought it was the same person they pushed away. My name is Daniel Brooks. And for most of my life, I felt like the forgotten son. I grew up watching my older brother, Ryan, receive everything. The attention, the praise, the trust. My father built Brooks Manufacturing from nothing. A small workshop became a company worth millions. And everyone believed Ryan would be the one to continue his legacy, including my father. Ryan was confident. He was charming. He knew how to impress people. I was different. I was quiet. I preferred working behind the scenes. I studied numbers. I learned every part of the business. I knew the employees. I knew the customers. I knew every mistake that could destroy the company. But nobody noticed, because people often notice the person speaking, not the person preparing. After college, I joined my father's company, but Ryan made sure I stayed invisible. Whenever I suggested an idea, he ignored it. Whenever I solved the problem, he took the credit, and my father never questioned him. One night, everything changed. My father called me into his office. He looked tired, older than I had ever seen him. He closed the door and said, "Daniel, there's something you need to know." I sat down, and that's when he told me the truth. The company was struggling. Bad investments, poor decisions, and the person responsible was Ryan. My father wanted me to take control, but before he could change anything, he passed away. After the funeral, my family gathered with the lawyers. I thought this was finally the moment my father would recognize me. But instead, Ryan walked in smiling, like he already knew he had won. The lawyer opened the documents. Ryan looked at me confidently. Then the lawyer said, "According to the will, Ryan Brooks will become the new CEO of Brooks Manufacturing." Everyone looked at me, waiting for my reaction. Ryan smiled, a smile that said, "You lost." But then the lawyer continued, "There is one condition." Ryan's smile disappeared. "The company cannot be sold, transferred, or destroyed without approval from the majority shareholder." Ryan looked confused. "Who is the majority shareholder?" The lawyer turned toward me and said, "Daniel Brooks." The room went silent, because while everyone thought I was the forgotten son, my father had secretly prepared me for the biggest responsibility of my life. But I didn't reveal everything that day. I didn't take control. I didn't embarrass Ryan. I simply stood up and walked away because I wanted to see something. I wanted to know what Ryan would do when he finally had everything he always wanted. And that was his biggest mistake. For the first time in my life, I had the power to take everything back. I could have removed Ryan from the company. I could have exposed every mistake he made. I could have told everyone the truth. But I didn't, because I wanted to know something. I wanted to see if Ryan truly wanted to protect my father's legacy, or if he only wanted the title. For the next few months, I watched from a distance. Ryan became the new CEO. He loved the attention, the interviews, the expensive suits, the feeling of being in control. Everywhere he went, he introduced himself as the man who saved Brooks Manufacturing. But the truth was different. The company wasn't being saved. It was slowly falling apart. Ryan started making decisions based on ego. He fired experienced employees because they questioned him. He canceled important projects because he wanted quick results. He ignored advice from people who had spent decades building the business. I remember one day, I visited the factory. I saw employees who had worked with my father for 30 years packing their things. One of them, Robert, stopped me. He looked disappointed. "Daniel," he sighed, "your father would be heartbroken seeing what is happening." I looked around. The same factory where my father spent his entire life. The same place where he started with nothing. And now, it was being destroyed by someone who only cared about proving himself. That night, I opened my father's old journal. He had written something years before, a sentence that I never forgot. A company doesn't fail because of competition. It fails when the people protecting it forget why it was built. And suddenly I understood. My father didn't choose me because I was smarter than Ryan. He chose me because I cared about the people behind the company, not just the numbers. A few weeks later, Ryan made his biggest mistake. He decided to sell the company. A massive deal. Millions of dollars. He thought it would make him look like a genius. He thought everyone would celebrate. But there was one problem. He forgot about the majority shareholder. Me. The morning of the sale, Ryan walked into the conference room, smiling. Investors were waiting. Lawyers were ready. The contracts were on the table. He picked up the pen. Then the door opened. I walked in. Everyone turned. Ryan looked shocked. Daniel? I sat down calmly. Before you sign anything, I think there's something you should know. He laughed. You don't have any authority here. I looked at the lawyers. They placed the documents in front of him. The room became silent, because the truth was finally revealed. The person Ryan ignored for years was the person who had the power to stop everything. His face changed. How long have you known? I looked at him. Since the beginning. You knew everything? I nodded. Every mistake. Every bad decision. Every person you pushed away. Ryan looked angry. You let me fail? I paused. Then I answered. No, I'll let you reveal who you really were. That was the moment he understood. The company wasn't taken from him. He lost it because he never understood what it meant to own something. But I wasn't finished yet. Because before I decided Ryan's future, I wanted him to hear the truth my father never got the chance to tell him. Ryan stood there silently. For the first time in his life, he didn't have an answer. The man who always knew what to say, the man who could convince anyone of anything, was finally facing a truth he couldn't escape. I looked at him and said, Do you remember when we were kids? He looked confused. You always wanted to be the one Dad chose. Ryan looked away, because he knew exactly what I meant. When Dad praised you, I was happy for you. When people celebrated your success, I supported you. When you made mistakes, I protected you. I paused. But you spent your entire life trying to prove you were better than me. Ryan's expression changed, because for the first time, he wasn't looking at me as competition. He was looking at me as his brother. I never wanted what you had, Ryan. I never wanted the spotlight. I just wanted you to respect the work I did. The room stayed quiet. Even the lawyers stopped looking at the documents. Everyone was listening. Ryan finally spoke. Why didn't you stop me earlier? I looked at him, and honestly, that was the question I had been asking myself. Because if I stopped you immediately, you would have blamed me. You would have said I took something away from you. But by letting you continue, you showed everyone who you really were. The board made their decision that afternoon. Ryan was removed from his position. Not because I wanted revenge, because his choices had consequences. I could have destroyed him. I could have made sure nobody ever trusted him again. But I didn't, because my father taught me something important. A person who destroys themselves doesn't need your help. Months later, Brooks Manufacturing was stronger than ever. The employees who had left returned. The customers came back, and the company started growing again. One evening, I visited my father's office. It was still exactly the same. The old desk, the old pictures, the same chair where he spent thousands of hours building his dream. I found one final letter he had written, a letter he wanted me to read after I took control. The first line said, Daniel, if you are reading this, then you finally understand why I chose you. I continued reading. A leader isn't the person who wants power the most. A leader is the person who protects what matters when nobody is watching. And that's when I understood. My father never chose me because I was the better son. He chose me because I understood the difference between owning something and being responsible for it. Years later, people still ask me, wasn't it satisfying proving your brother wrong? And I always give the same answer. No, seeing him fail was never the goal. The goal was saving what my father spent his entire life building. Because the greatest revenge isn't watching someone lose. It's becoming the person they never believed you could become. It's standing quietly while everyone who underestimated you finally understands your value. And sometimes, the person standing in the background, the person nobody notices, is the one who was preparing for the biggest moment of their life all along. A few years passed after that day. The company continued to grow, but the biggest change wasn't in the numbers. It was in the people. The employees who once felt ignored finally felt valued again. The customers who lost trust slowly returned. And the legacy my father built was finally safe. As for Ryan, He moved away from the business world for some time. For months, I heard nothing from him. And honestly, I didn't know if he would ever understand what happened. Then one day, I received a letter. No email, no phone call, just a handwritten letter. It was from Ryan. Inside, he wrote, "Daniel, I spent my whole life trying to beat you, but I never realized you were never competing with me. You were just trying to protect what Dad created." I read those words several times, because for years, all I wanted was for my brother to see the truth. Not that I was better than him, not that I deserved more, but that we could have built something together. I eventually met Ryan, not in a boardroom, not as business partners, just as two brothers. He apologized, and for the first time in years, we had a real conversation. I learned something that day. Sometimes revenge isn't about making someone suffer. Sometimes the greatest victory is reaching a place where their actions no longer control your emotions. My brother tried to take my father's legacy from me, but what he never understood was that a legacy isn't kept by the person who owns the most. It's protected by the person who cares the most. And that is the lesson I carry with me today. People may underestimate your silence. They may mistake your patience for weakness. But never forget, the quiet person watching everything is often the person preparing for the moment when everything changes. And when that moment arrives, you don't need to prove your power. The truth does it for you.